By complete accident, the Anbernic RG28XX has become one of my most used devices day to day, and it has quickly become one of my favorite devices, not only for its amazing price point, its super small, convenient form factor. Overall, it's just a very fun device and serves a very important function in my everyday carry. It has replaced my old Anbernic RG351M that I used to carry around everywhere with me because it was a very portable device. But this device, being even more portable than that one, maintains its position as my number one pocketable device. Something that I just slip into my coat or my pants pocket. Basically, whenever I'm leaving the house, this device is coming with me. Above a bunch of other devices that I love, but just sometimes aren't the most practical. Like my Steam Deck, Odin 2, stuff like that aren't exactly practical to take with you everywhere you go. But the 28XX just makes perfect sense. It's small, it's compact, offers decent enough performance that allows you to emulate all the way up to PS1 and 64 kind of stuff, but not really well, mainly because the lack of buttons makes playing those systems rather boring. Not even necessarily boring, just a bad overall experience, but that's not really what it's designed for. All I basically do with this is play, Super Mario World or Pokemon, just some light and easy to run games, irregardless of what system they're on, that run perfectly fine on the 28XX, but it's the kind of game that I just sort of pick up and play whenever there's a lull or just some time to burn. Like whenever I'm sitting at a restaurant waiting to get seated, I pull this guy out, play a little bit of Mario while I'm waiting, and then I get seated and then I put it away. It's that kind of a system, You're playing this transiting between places or just, moving around the house, and I'm just sitting in the kitchen or the living room just watching something on my iPad, waiting for something to cook in the microwave or the air fryer. I'm playing on this. 2 months later, it has consistently been one of my most played devices, just because of that simple portability factor that this device has, being the most portable device that I have. There are more portable devices like the RG Nano and similarly super small devices like that, but overall, frankly, any smaller, it starts becoming more of a novelty than a practical actual device you can use consistently, because most of the time, once you're that small, it's just not that comfortable. But the 28XX sort of strikes that good balance of being comfortable and still being actually usable and pocketable all at the same time. Something I have noticed in my couple months of using this device is the less than stellar build quality. It's not the worst I've ever used, but it's a little bit worse than what Anbernic typically does for most of their devices. It doesn't feel quite as solid, it doesn't feel quite as premium. The plastics feel of a lower grade, but that does make sense for its cheaper price point than compared to most of Anbernic's other offerings. I just wish it was a little bit higher quality than what we ended up having. As I mentioned before, this has replaced my Anbernic RG351M, which I made a video about way in the early days of my channel. It's a great device, but it was kind of heavy. It was made out of full aluminum, so maybe that's where some of my misgivings about the overall build quality comes from, just coming from my previous everyday carry device being made out of full aluminum, then going to this and it's being unapologetically plastic. So maybe that's why I feel the way I do about its build quality, but overall, it has been a much needed improvement for that kind of device. It is perfect for sliding into your pocket. I can't stress enough how portable this device is and how easy it is for me just to pick up and play a couple, levels of Mario here and there. That's the perfect use case for this kind of device. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense as a dedicated device. Like if you had one device, it should be this. But if it was like an auxiliary system, something that you had to play whenever you just had a moment, something that you didn't have to do, it was like a whole to-do to play. Like when you're sitting down and I have 5 minutes to play while waiting for something, this is that device. But if you had 2 hours to burn, this isn't the kind of device I would recommend to buy. because while it is comfortable to play on, I wouldn't say it's comfortable for long. The longest play session I had with this was about an hour, and by the end of that hour, my hand was starting to cramp due to its smaller size. And before I had this device, I also carried around my 35XX-H model around with me, and that sort of supplanted my, a 351M, but the time between the 35XX-H and the 28XX, there wasn't that much time, so I wouldn't really consider the 35XX-H replace the 351M just because of how little time I actually used it in that capacity. So for longer play sessions, it did leave me wanting something a little bit larger, something like the 35XX-H. And for that device, it's great, but it's also not the most portable device that they have. Not saying it's large by any means, but the 28XX is much smaller and tends to be a lot more portable. Something can just slip in my pocket and I would barely notice it was there. And that's precisely how it has become my most used device so quickly. It's purely because of how portable and light it is, allowing me to pop it out and play with it whenever I had a moment to spare. Whenever I felt like, oh, this might take a minute, I would pop it out and play. It's kind of the perfect use case for this device. Because as I mentioned before, this isn't the kind of device you would want to be your only emulation device, mainly because it's lacking in a few other areas. Some would argue, why don't you just use your phone if you just want spur-of-the-moment emulation? But even using an Android phone, it is a little bit of setup to get Android emulation really going in comparison to just turning on the device and immediately being able to jump into a game. And unless you keep around a full USB-C attachable controller for your phone, it's exactly not the funnest thing to do to use touch controls. So even though a phone would be probably the most ideal sort of replacement for this, it just doesn't make a lot of sense purely because of the lack of controls, the whole setting up all the, Android or iOS emulation stuff in the first place not being quite as, plug and play as you might probably hope it would be. So I feel like the 28XX still makes a valid argument for why you should have this, even though you might have some better emulation solution. So after 2 months, I would say this device is incredibly worth it. I love this device and has radically changed the amount of gaming I actually get to do. But what do you guys think? Are you interested in this kind of device? Do you have this device and feel the same way? Do you take it around with you everywhere and play with it whenever you have a moment? I would love to hear what you guys think down below. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All the other social media garbage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.